Hi, everybody. I haven't done an interview for a while, but Fatima contacted me a few months back, and I felt it was worth doing an interview with her, and you'll find out about her as we go along. So, Fatima lives in Singapore, and maybe we could start, Fatima, with you sharing a bit about how you grew up, what your spiritual background was.
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much, Grace, for spending the time and taking the time to do this. So to answer your question, it's as simple as growing up, I was brought up in a Catholic religion. My mom has always been very prayerful since she was young. So she raised us that way. So we have two sisters, and so I lived it. And yeah, so as long as I was living under their household, I followed wherever they want to go, like church, whenever they want to pray. But as a child, I remember telling myself I had enough reverence to understand that it was important. That it was important to my parents. Somewhere it would be an important moral values that has much deeper meaning than any religion. But I wasn't fully in it as an individual. I was young enough, but still understanding enough. So that's where I was then. Yeah.
And so what happened then? I mean, how did life unfold, and how did your spiritual journey unfold?
Sure, thanks for asking. So what happened was truly this. I eventually was seeking for freedom, but freedom in the wrong reasons. As a teenager, you're meant to make mistakes, but make as much mistakes as long as you learn more. So what I said was, at that point, I was making mistakes by thinking freedom is taking liberation from my family home because I felt confined. So I left the house. For Asian home at 18, you don't do that.
Yes.
But so I did it, and I lived in a hostel. I still respected my parents. I never did anything wrong outside, so to speak. I was just looking for freedom, like go out with friends whenever you want, never do anything wrong. But I always had that notion growing up. You never spoil the moral values, and that's good for every parent to instill because as you grow up, you contain it still. So I went on, but I lost my way in practicing religion because I didn't understand it. So I understood why I was doing it back then. So I didn't practice it anymore. So as life went on, I realized I was always getting what I wanted to get in terms of a job and in terms of progressing education, although that's not exactly what I wanted to do, but to realize that my parents wanted me to reach somewhere. So I did that, and I took benefits of worked hard enough, you get ways to scholarships and stuff, and you make the most of it. But I was never happy. So in an egocentric way, in a term that you speak of ego that today I understand, I was building a life just to chase the life that hopefully my parents get happy, and at the same time I get to where I was. And during that point, of course, like a normal person, you go through life, you eventually meet someone, you decide if you want to get married or not, because the age is a factor. And you do the necessary, doesn't matter where it ends, but when it ends, it has to end because there's a call. So I traveled to the US after finishing everything to get another job in the same thing that I was still doing because in the hope that I was building a better life even
So
more.
sorry to interrupt, Fatima.
Yeah, sure.
What were you doing, and
Yeah, sure.
how old were you when you went to the US then?
So I was about 20, I was about 29
Mm-hmm.
when I went to the States. I had finished most of the basics of what people finish in our life. I studied up to a PhD as a neuroscientist in laboratory research. And it was then that you finish the basics of like getting married and stuff. And I reached the States. I wasn't happy. Um, in the sense of terms that I was kind of doing the same thing of working too hard enough to sustain myself and
Mm-hmm.
whatever family I needed to support then. And there was a point it reached where the person I was with as my ex-husband now showed me a lot of things that maybe you need to realize a lot of things, and I want to go home because there was a fault on his side. Okay. And I accepted. I went back. I did the best I could. But before I headed back to Singapore, I made sure I had sustenance to support myself. Doesn't matter what I get. So I went back to Malaysia and I already got a job to head to Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Singapore. At Singapore, I was still trying to build a life on the same kind of job. I wasn't happy. I was still trying to go back and spend time with the people necessary. But the harder I tried. So in every step of the way, a bigger realization was I tried very hard to get what I wanted because it's clearly you don't need to try at the end of the day. You just need to be open when you understand the process and it just falls to you. I only understood this later. So in Singapore, I lost everything apart from only my family remaining, especially my mother. So I lost everything, but I still had a job for sustenance and I had gratitude for that. And I said, okay, I don't, and at that point, I didn't know what spirituality was. I heard a lot of people talk about meditation, and I suffer from minor ADHD, meaning I can't sit in one place for too long a time. So I sit there until I can't, and then I take a break to walk around a bit. And at that point, I realized when I said I couldn't do meditation, there was a reason because I said I wasn't ready, but I still wasn't open to it. So one night came where I was total loss of everything in the past, and I cried in front of the altar. And I said, God and universe, from the bottom of my heart, I am asking for help because I deemed I have failed in everything I've done so far in my understanding. And I meant it from the heart and I cried it all out. And that is when the next morning I woke up feeling the first feeling that people feel when they have a minute of a start to a spiritual awakening when they're open. I felt like I was walking on air. I had forgotten what it felt like to feel pain, to feel worries. I was just in glee. I was just living my life, breathing in nature, going to work, enjoy, although it didn't feel like it was joy if I look back at that time. And I accepted it without question. I was like, what's going on? Then I said, never mind, live with it. You asked for something, just live with it. But make it a remembrance and keep asking questions as you need it later. For now, just take it. So I went to work. It lasted exactly a day. The next morning when I woke up, I sat down and I spent an entire day I was planning to watch a movie thinking that, oh wow, it's gonna last the next day, and I trust even further. But that's when it breaks all the emotions. Only later I understood. Turned out I just called my mom and said, look, for today, I'm taking time to myself because I'm crying and I can't stop crying.
Mhm.
And I spent the whole day just having my laptop open, wasn't looking. I was looking at a blank white wall. And I was just crying. And I said, I don't know why I'm crying, but I'm taking it. But I felt like all the pain that I felt over what I've been hiding in that. At that point, I was 31.
Mhm.
And I said, just accept it. This is the journey. You got to trust it. And I was happy to do it. Like it felt like a lot of pain, but I let it go. And at that time, as I looked up from the wall, I saw the image of Jesus on the wall. And I just said, okay, trust it, but move away from it and just continue crying. And I kept asking, why am I crying? But I let go as I kept weeping worse. By end of night, I was very close to almost done. So I sat in darkness and I said, maybe I need to meditate. Just close my eyes. And for the first time, something amazing happened, and it truly did. I never expected it because as I was starting to do it, I still had sadness, but I had wept all I had to do. And I saw an image of myself sitting on a beach on a rock. And that image was me smiling. It was a real image of the me in the now. And it just looked at me. And as I approached the image, I already knew the answer. Even when I tell you this, goosebumps come because it's great to speak about it. And I said that, oh my God, while I was in the meditation, you know what? You were the one person I should have said sorry to. You're the one person where I seek love so much from, I should have said, I love you first. And then I can ask forgiveness for my own family and help them understand where I'm at. So at that point, I hugged that version of myself and I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, and I don't deserve this, and neither do you, of least of all. And I said, you're me and what I can become. And I love you. And I left that beach telling, I see how happy you can be, and my job is to do whatever I can. Trust me, I will. And I headed back. I didn't want to see more in the meditation. I knew I was done. I finished the last bit of crying and I called my mom and I explained to her, look, it was just me. And I apologized to you. And somehow she understood what I experienced. And she said, I'm glad you're on your journey. I'll support you as much as you can. And she said, call me anytime you need me. I'll be available. And that was the end of the call. And the next day, it was Days of Dark Night of the Soul, which I welcomed. But as I did that, I went deeper into each of my meditations without knowing anything about any of it, about what you can open up to. So you can ask questions from here.
Okay. You know, it's interesting that often on the spiritual journey, when people reach a place of opening and, you know, greater knowing of themselves or not being caught in the personality, as you did, often then what happens is that suffering comes, pain comes to be felt, to be, to be experienced. And in my, one-on-one work with people, often, that's what we're dealing with, because it's like sometimes it can be so overwhelming that people do feel they need help. They need like some kind of frame safe space, like a therapeutic space where they can bring all this and have help with it. How did you, and I'm wondering, you seem to have a confidence and a trust that whatever pain came, you just had to experience it. And you didn't need help with it. How was that possible?
So one of the things was this. Ever since I was 5 years old, I could remember every simple thing in my life. Every hurt, everything. But I always remember telling my mom this. If I became a doctor, I would want to go to Africa and give my service there for free. And I went on growing up asking her this question. There's more greater meaning to life. And she was always taken back. And I kept wondering about that and that. And this is the same question I asked at night. And it's not true that I didn't get help, because at that point, I was one of those people that had chosen, I will trust the process. So it all happened. The dark night of the soul was the first day there was a COVID lockdown in Singapore. Where I was shut. Yeah, exactly. I was shut. I couldn't go anywhere and I was alone. And my mom was also worried. I shared every night with her. I told her about every pain. And I also had a very close friend who is currently my personal assistant for consciousness, and that's Julie Tan. And she followed and heard every process, making sure I was okay. And I was very open to her. And she knew I needed someone, but everyone respected. My mom and her were the only people. I didn't care about anybody else at that point. And I said, I'm grateful, but I'll talk to you all every day and know that I'm okay. And they respected when I said I'm okay, but I spent enough time even after that talking normal stuff with them. And so I did get help and a lot of support just from the people that I trusted. That at that point, these were people that I can trust. And the situation with COVID made me trust there's a lot more that you can do in that lockdown rather than thinking of it as a lockdown. So I trusted that part and I embraced being alone, not in darkness, but in hope of what I already saw and felt before. Living that air, but bringing your feet to the ground, and when the job is done, which took in total after that point an additional 2 years to reach a level of consciousness and kindness and love and practice in today's world. As an individual as you are, answering questions that people as grateful as you would interview, and lets me tell as well that everyone gets a chance to use all the help that they can get. Everyone's journey is different. It's gonna be different. And respect the people who come in front of you and do the best you can with the advice they give you. ask for help. That's always the key, I say.
Mhm. So I'm wondering, you mentioned that Jesus appeared to you.
Yeah.
Is that a presence you felt that was there to help and support you, or was that something kind of more meaningless to you?
Okay, so at that point, I always said this. It's an image because of what I held deep down in my heart out of reverence. But it taught me something later as well. So I knew that point that I felt that I was walking in clouds. There's one thing I told my mom and I told Julie as well, that I have never felt this kind of love, even from your own family. It's God-like, it's higher power-like.
Mhm.
And I said, this is something else. So as it's open more to meditation, I was slowly brought on through understanding what in all my meditations, as I was opening up and healing, that was Buddhism, that was everything. But my reverence was when I went to sleep one day, and it was in the afternoon during this process, that I saw an image of a man that looked a lot like Jesus, but he wasn't the image of what Jesus looks like in the real world, just that how he dresses. And this man truly was someone who had a limp in his leg and he was he looked disheveled. He had nice long hair, but he had a beard and standard. And I was running away from an urgent situation of someone trying to harm me. And this man saved me. And I said, thank you so much and so much love. I said, I truly want to do something for you. What can I do? And in that dream, it felt so real. He said, nothing. I asked that you just help me to just clean myself up a bit before I continue on my journey. I said, sure, why not? And we paused somewhere where I myself said, look, let me help you first. Let me clean your wound. And he said, no, you can't if you don't want to. Then I said, no, let me. And he didn't stop. Let me clean his wound. He walked with me to my house and I was trying to let him in. And at that point, my mom turned around and said, in that dream, look, you have to be wary of people who you bring to the house. And I said, I know in all my power this is not wrong. And if that's your way, then I'll walk with him wherever he wants to go. And he said, no, don't follow me. My journey continues. But live with that reverence of what you did in the real world. And he continues on. And I realized it's much more than all of it. So I continued on to practice the normal religion, understanding that it's not reverence to what we believe. It's moral values of basics. If you were to read every religion from word to word, there's a lot of argument that can go. So I live by truth, of love, of truth, of faith, of hope. So I still practice what I do, but understanding the message and respecting every other religion. Yeah. That's what I have to say.
Mm. What I'm hearing is that there really is a difference, not just from you, from everybody, who's really steeped in truth and in love, is that religious beliefs can only go so far.
Yes.
And the reality of who we are and what we are, the reality of love has to be known beyond any words that could describe it.
Yes.
And beyond
Very
any
true.
image that could carry it, like an image of Jesus, or, could be the Buddha, or could be a saint. And the actual experience, the actual knowing of what it is that's being transmitted, or that's expressed in that image, or in that appearance, or in that knowing has to be direct. It has to be right here, it has to.
Yes, from the heart.
Yeah.
So to agree with you in my terms would also mean this way, that you respect everyone's beliefs, but always tell them where you are and what you would respect from them. And that love is not just words. And when people are happy and say accordingly, it's not just that. Love needs to understand you need to start with yourself first. And it doesn't come from an egocentric of self. It still comes from within, like truly letting yourself feel pain in order to heal. That's love. And forgiving yourself, that's key number one, that begins the journey towards love. But in the reality of what people can practice through love is know where they are as small indications is moving forward, and eventually try, is that true love is that regardless of who does what in front of you, you still mean I love you through your actions. You still accept them, and you can do that with anyone eventually after you do that. So it doesn't need someone to act the way you want them to act. That's never going to happen.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how you feel about this, but even before the actions, there needs to be an inner openness to the other, just the way they are, and whatever they do, and whatever they say, and whatever they think. That love is that openness that embraces that, whatever that is, that person, this action. So it has to be an inner reality before it becomes an action.
Yeah. So I agree with you, and how I would say in my terms to explain exactly what you said would be this. Forgive yourself first, and then really truly forgive yourself. And then go through your process. Doesn't matter what you do. Speak your truth, act your truth. And you will eventually learn the meaning of love first. And then you will learn to love yourself truly. And that's only deemed by how you treat your individual self. And how you portray love to the person in front of you is not just by doing what they want, not by saying, I love you, anything, but it comes down to more of this. If you forgive yourself, then the most important thing is everyone who hurt you during that time after you forgive yourself, the forgiveness to all those people who have left your life just comes naturally. That you don't have hurt in the past for those people anymore. In fact, you love them and you respect them and you thank them for the opportunity that you've been given to realize and make a step forward even further.
So Fatima, since you use that concept a lot, of forgiveness.
Yes.
What exactly do you mean by forgiveness?
So for me, it started with self-acceptance and saying that I had harmed myself first in all consciousness, and finishing as much as I could with the time I was given, but never forcing it. I was just open to opening up and stopping myself from everything that harmed me by letting all those emotions out. Once I solved that.
So can I ask more about that?
Sure.
So what you're saying is that for you, forgiveness started with really opening up to whatever it is that came up for you, whatever pain, whatever painful memories.
Yes.
Came in that first time after the awakening.
Yes.
So how, very practically, how did you do that? You just allowed these memories to come? Were they like specific memories, or were they just like pain that wanted to come?
So at first, I didn't know what this pain was, but I knew that I owed that pain to myself to say that the journey is going to start now, and I let it out, and I'm going to forgive you first. I will understand that more along the way.
So pain came without specific memories. It was just pain.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I just had childhood memories, so it started from there. And that was the first thing I let go of.
So, that's going to be my specific questions, just because I work with people in a very psychological and therapeutic way.
Sure.
And, people always ask me that, how do you let something go? So how did you let it go? Say, a memory of a painful childhood experience came.
How I would say this is this. Which I always tell people who I work with for free in normal advice that I give. Why would you want to hang on to something so long if it's hurting you? If you can blame everybody and still stay in it and do the necessary, but still harm yourself further, why would you do it longer? Then you just keep harming people in front of you, keep withdrawing yourself and blaming everybody else. So stop harming yourself. Realize that everything you hold on to in the past is the past for a reason. It's meant to learn a lesson and let it go when you're given a chance. Because if not, it's destroying your present and the future you can build. So
here's an interesting question for you. You're a neuroscientist, Fatima.
Yes.
And at the level of the brain,
yes,
nerve cells have firing pattern, neural pathways that are set, and that firing patterns will go in because they've always gone like this. So if you have a painful childhood memory and it gets, it comes up, obviously there's a neural pathway that's set with that. So here's the question.
Sure.
How is it possible? And for me, this is a mystery.
Okay, sure.
How is it possible that what is an established pattern in the brain, how can that disappear? How can that be let go of?
So I always never understood why I was in neuroscience until I understood it. And truth be told, today I quit my neuroscientist job. Today was the last day.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I understood why I was there. And to answer your question, it goes this way. The brain has the capacity to grow and rewire itself. It will keep firing fear and the same pathway based on your triggers. Now, what keeps this going is the fact that your subconscious, which is still part of your brain, the middle region of your brain towards the back, is still firing to trigger your conscious, because your conscious holds the firing patterns that hope for change. But the one that's ruling is the subconscious. So every trigger that happens fires a neural pattern. And that is from the midbrain all the way to the front brain. And what happens when consciousness, the forebrain, takes over and says, I've got this. I'm going to rewire the other way. So what happens is eventually it takes time. To keep it simple, it takes time, but it's possible. And that's what doctors work with. That's what laboratory research workers work with. Working on regeneration of neural cells. They can't put it in the brain yet. So they try and do all this meditation to try and get the forebrain to send information towards the back region of the brain. Let's change the wiring of information this way. So if the output went into the forebrain initially and the input was from consciousness, the rewiring creates the input from the forebrain and sends it to the subconscious midbrain. And then there's no question asked. You just fire away, and eventually, if so many of those nerves, so much as one additional one overpower the back, it keeps regenerating, and the subconscious midbrain takes over all neural patterns. And that's how, even from there, you slowly start to heal, because your backbone leads to every healing part of your body.
So is there, you're giving me a scientific kind of take on
Yeah.
this right now, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, in my and I understand, I understand the neuroscience of changing neural pathways.
Yes.
But you can only do that over time, right?
Yes. How can you start in the real world?
Sorry?
How can you start in normal everyday practice of doing that in application in your work or whatever people do? Is that your question?
No, it's a bit more philosophical than that.
Okay, sure. Ah!
Let me see, how do I put this? In my experience, there's not just the rewiring that happens. That takes time because new pathways have to be established, right? Over old pathways. So, but then, there's moments in a healing journey when you come to experience something so fully and so deeply that true liberation happens. And whatever this experience is, this pain is, it's simply done. You know, it's like it's gone. Or you could say in your terms, it's fully forgiven because it's been so fully experienced or received or expressed that nothing else is needed. You know, it's like it's run its course. And neuroscientifically, I don't know that's even explainable, but it is a fact that that can happen. And some of what you're sharing about forgiving yourself sounds like this. And my own experience is that that definitely can happen. It's happened in my life. It's happened in the life of clients, you know. So I just think it's fascinating, you know, my sense is that science can only go so far, and then there's a place where we simply have to say, okay, we know this happens, but we can't explain it. And, you know, for me, that's just in the realm of a mystery that stays a mystery.
So your question would be?
Well, what do you think about that?
So after I explain, I always tell this to everybody. Some things are supposed to remain a mystery because you're supposed to do it and feel it for yourself. Because there's an extent to every science of what doctors say. You're never going to breach that part no matter how hard you try. If you could, then everybody would be doing this. And they'll use it in various different ways. So there's a reason that there's a certain part that has to remain a mystery. So that's my explanation for there's no hope in science finding out further. And I know that. And that's why even I knew I was done in a lot of ways. So mysteries sometimes are meant to remain mysteries because the person who finds them out just leaves it as such and keeps it and hopes that whatever they share with people, everyone has the opportunity to do it. So to put it in a simple term is that rewiring can happen, if you ask me, very fast. Because if you take control of your brain in the sense that you keep going to your happy place and keep telling yourself, I'm gonna do this, I have faith, have confidence, and actually act that you have faith and confidence, there's no choice. Rewiring slowly starts to take place, but the actions need to continue. It's okay to fail, but realize you can't keep making that same mistake on the same thing and saying, it's okay to fail, it's okay to fail. Then rewiring won't complete. So it happens in any way according to the progress of the individual. And that's why in scientific terms, you can't force an individual to build that firing patterns. Until then, you're just firing readings for that moment of time. Yeah. So.
So if I understand you right in what you're saying is, for you, it's more a question of choosing, you know, of choice, of either going with the old habitual patterns or really choosing a different one, a new one.
Yes, you're right. It comes down to that. Every individual does have a chance. the idea is you take and do the best you can. Everyone is on a journey. You get to ask for anybody for help. Be honest with asking for help. Asking for help doesn't make you weaker. It gives you an opportunity to go further.
That's
So,
so true. You know,
yeah,
asking for help is so important.
exactly. So I always tell people, if I'm in front of you, ask. It's the same as if you ask, it'll be answered. We'll help as much as we can. But we need you to know that you're acting upon what we're trying to tell you. Everyone can take their time and their journey. They just need to be clear about what they want, and we'll assist as much as they can.
So, is there anything you want to add to that, Fatima? I mean, is there something in your experience that you feel could serve others that you'd still want to share with them?
Sure. So after I thought I finished my dark night, I said, I thought it was over. But I had a few couple of short periods of that in the present moment of life of what I had still not cleared in the past. And many times I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I said, I remember what was much worse. And I've done so much, I'm finishing this. So my advice would be that no matter how hard it gets, never give up. Trust that you can do it. You're the only person who can trust yourself first. You've been given an opportunity, make the most of it. Many look for it. Very few get to start. If you're there, ask for all the help that you need. And just accept and enjoy the process. Every pain is actually an enjoyment towards a greater liberation. That's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. You
Yeah.
know, and personally, I don't know it ever stops. You know, I mean
It never does.
the very concept of the dark night of the soul suggests that at some point you're done, but I don't think you're ever done. You know, I mean, things may come for liberation forever, and you know, when a life is dedicated to that, then we're open for that.
Yeah. You just realize that you don't spend so much time in pain. Because
Yes.
you know there's a lesson and you've learned it. You let the emotions go in that short period and you're okay with it. And you realize it's worthless. I realize what I'm crying for. I learned my lesson. It's going to keep coming. So always be open because it makes you one level higher.
Mm-hmm. You know, in one possible definition, awareness simply is openness. It's an openness to
Yeah,
what is.
awareness. Yeah, it
You
is.
know,
It is.
so whatever comes, if it's here, we're open to that, and that's
It's the greatest
what it
gift.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are you going from here? I mean, now that you've left your past as a neuroscientist,
Yeah.
where's life what's your choice? Where's life taking you?
So at the present moment, I'm living in the present and I'm still happy in Singapore. I still help a lot of people through my website and social media. And whoever comes in my life, I help them. I always start free first. Every experience is free. And so I have gone on to be a medical writer, and I'll be starting my job in a couple of days, and I completely work from home. So I have time to do both always. And that's what I've always wanted, and I'm happy where I am. I still help the real world in a medical perspective of setting good health information out, and still help as much as people that come my way through consciousness. One day at a time. That's how I live.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And you know, just because we live in the moment doesn't mean there are choices that are made that are just better choices as for now. Like, you know, you choose to become a medical writer because that serves you, it gives you more freedom in terms of serving also in this other more spiritual way.
Yeah. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions you have for me, Grace?
You know, Fatima, I'm fine. Actually, maybe what just pops up is
Sure.
Buddhism. I mean, meditation and Buddhism obviously entered your life in some ways. Has that been important also in terms of your awareness and opening, or was that just kind of more fleeting?
So it's what
encounter.
Yeah. So thanks for asking that. It's what started me to understand what Buddhism was trying to say from the start. Values.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it had. So the more I meditated, and generally I was someone who practiced those values growing up, no matter what I did, but I understood it further. And I saw more and more of this understanding, and I started watching a lot of what Dalai Lama was talking about at that point of time. Wasn't so much about him, it was more about the messages that he was giving. That what we all do today is the same kind of messages. So at the end of the day, I progressed on to slowly understand more religions, not because I was welcoming religions, but they just appeared in my meditation. And every time I learned something from a religion, it left me. As in, it stopped appearing in my meditations and the next one would come in. And that's what makes me respect every religion till today, but always tell them, understand the deeper meaning which all religion holds. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And you know, I'm also wondering, like, you know, the values that you're talking about, that you knew, that you lived by from childhood on. It's like, you know, often people on a spiritual path, they know those core values, you know, and they hold them dear and they appreciate them because they just know the truth of them. And it's like when awakening happens, what seems to me to happen is that these values just are grounded in an inner reality that's indisputable, you know, that's just that's just known for what it is. And so the values are an expression of that. They like, compassion, kindness, which are typical Buddhist values, or the value of love in Christianity. They're just like they're colorings, or they're like facets of that deeply known truth of who we are.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
So I'd say this. At the end of the day, that's the whole experience of spirituality. Gaining the understanding of love, kindness, forgiveness, happiness, joy, spread of it all to humanity, regardless. And that by itself is not what you hope to see along the journey. Is that where you can reach? And there's no greater liberation that. And that at that point, I realized what the true meaning of freedom was.
So what is the true meaning of freedom?
Understanding that and sharing that exact feeling at a point where you know it's worth and what everyone has a chance to share with everyone. That is the true meaning of freedom, and always living in your truth.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's a good place to end. Do you think?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Fatima.
Thank you so much, Grace.
Yeah. It's been interesting. Actually, I do have one last question.
Sure.
Because when Julie, your assistant, wrote to me,
yeah,
she was also talking about bringing an Asian woman's perspective into spirituality. So
yes.
I'm wondering, what is that for you? What do you feel you can bring to this that's specific to who you are and how you've grown up and your cultural background?
Sure. So most Asian families, they worry so much about the kids and stuff, and kids grow up according to how their parents want, and then they literally grow up that way. Many are like this, who are in that journey having a spiritual awakening, but they're so scared to speak it up or even approach anybody. The most they would do is just tarot as a business without understanding the main part of spirituality. So everyone's afraid to speak out. That it's sad to say, let alone Malaysia and in Singapore, there's no one I know who has spoken yet, no matter how far I try to reach. So I try to help everybody across every other country who are seeking for help. And I'm more successful finding normal people to speak their truth overseas. So, and this is what I realized. In every other country, we had Asians who had lived in foreign countries for years. They eventually learned how to open up and live in liberation of speaking truth at all times. So they just be whoever they want. And that's what we lack in an Asian country. So what I hope is that Asians realize that I'm very much Asian. Like, I'm grown up and I've been Asian all my life, and that's not going to change. And everyone is. It doesn't matter about your race or whatever. You just got to realize you're human. And just like every individual gets a chance, speak out, because there are people like us who really exist right beside you. And you're just not looking yet.
That's beautiful. It's
Thank
like
you.
you're really encouraging others to to follow their inner truth and their inner calling, you know, whatever that is. And
Yeah.
yes, you know, in Western countries, that's kind of, it's more standard because these countries are so much more individualist, you know, and Asian countries are more, and Asian traditions are much more kind of family and tradition oriented.
Yes.
And it's easier for Western people to open up and look for freedom than it is for Asian people, for sure. Yes. So here you are. You're encouraging everybody else.
Yes, I am encouraging everybody.
Yes. Yes. Good. May they find you, and may they be helped by you and supported by you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awakening is not limited to any particular culture or religion or
No, it's not.
ethnic background or racialized background.
Yes.
It's universal, isn't it?
Yes. It's as long as you have blood flowing through your veins and you're walking through this earth, everyone can do it.
Yes.
Yes. The idea is break free from traditions. Be you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Fatima.
Thank
And
you, Grace.
maybe you could just add how people can find you.
Sure. So you can always find me on Instagram, social media. It's consciousness1808. Additionally, if you personally want to send me an email, it's at fmna@gmail.com.
Perfect. That's very simple.
Thank you. I keep it simple.
Yes, keep it simple.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Fatima, and
Thank you, Grace, for
wishing you
having
so
me.
well on your journey.
You too.
Thank you.